That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, let's go through and let's look at every single matchup for running backs this week. And I'll say, oh my God, there are a lot of things going on at the position that we may end up having to change as the week goes on. But nonetheless, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. You know that we've been live streaming every single night for over 100 days now. We've been live streaming, I can't even put into words how many days and how many hours we have spent live streaming so far this year. And of course, not only subscribe to the channel, but go down there, drop that like, leave a comment as well. Every time you drop a like and leave a comment on a video, you actually get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. The winners for this video are going to be both Benjamin and Hola Brown. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And lastly, make sure y'all go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. On Underdog Fantasy, when you make your first deposit with promo code FLOCK, they actually match you dollar for dollar up to a $100 deposit. They have a ton of cool player props you can go out there and bet on in pretty much any state. And to go along with this, they have fantasy drafts that we are going to get into on the live streams. I mean, yes, I know it's week 10. I understand that, but still, you can get into playoff contests. There are so many cool things they have on Underdog. And when you sign up, use promo code FLOCK. It supports this channel so much, and you get paid to do so. So please make sure you do that, and you'll be seeing some player props on the screen in this video. Thomas, can you please throw them up that you'll be able to know that they're available on Underdog Fantasy for you to go and bet on if you use promo code FLOCK. And nonetheless, let's go through. Let's look at these matchups. Thursday night, this game is going to go on after we record this video, but this video will be published after the game. If I had to put a guess on it, I think too many people are going to be excited about Devontae Freeman. I think with Myles Gaskin, he gets his usual 16 carries without Malcolm Brown in this offense. He has some utilization in the receiving game, but not that exciting. Nonetheless, that's just a guess. Let's talk about our first game with the New Orleans Saints going up against the Tennessee Titans. And last night in the live stream, we had so many people asking us about Mark Ingram. Oh, should I go pick up? Yes, you should have Mark Ingram on your roster. Now, with Mark Ingram, I know right now we are not certain that Kamara is going to be 100% good to go. Obviously, Kamara is currently listed as questionable this game. At the time of this recording, the most recent report just saying Alvin Kamara dealing with a mild knee sprain. This is going to be something that we have to continue to monitor on Friday and Saturday. And you know, of course, we'll be giving all those updates in the live streams. But nonetheless, if Kamara plays, as we have discussed since the Jameis Winston injury, I'm going to be lowering my expectations on Alvin Kamara, expecting that Taysom Hill is going to have a larger role in this offense. And also, if you're looking at the usage that we have had from Mark Ingram as of late, what's really surprising is Mark Ingram is right there with Alvin Kamara in the amount of receptions he has in this backfield. I mean, Mark Ingram had 4 or 5 receptions this past week, which tied with Alvin Kamara. Now, of course, Kamara is a significantly better running back. Kamara is the more explosive RB that's going to be able to pick up more yards per reception, as well as more yards per carry. It's just way more dynamic overall. And also, one thing that we really like to see is the fact that Kamara still has the red zone role, which of course is crucial for Alvin Kamara hitting that elite ceiling in fantasy. I still don't necessarily think that he is that guaranteed top 3 running back that I know a lot of people rank him as. I would love to trade him for Christian McCaffrey. I think that would be a no-brainer. Love to trade him for Najee Harris. Love to trade him for Austin Eckler. Nonetheless, with Kamara, if he plays, you play him. I mean, it's a decent matchup against the Tennessee Titans. I mean, right now, the Titans, their opponent's rush defense, I mean, right now they're giving up the 24th most points to opposing running backs. And obviously, this is going to be a game that most likely New Orleans is going to be trailing, and they're going to be looking to throw the ball consistently, and you know that Kamara would be getting the dump off passes there. Now, if Alvin Kamara does miss this game, you fire up Mark Ingram, you play Mark Ingram everywhere. Just the workload that he would have would be so safe to guarantee him at least 15 carries and maybe 4 or 5 receptions out of the backfield as well, and he'd be a mid to high end running back too in this week. Now, on the Tennessee side of things, I mean, it's a horrible matchup against a very good New Orleans Saints run defense. I think there's no reason to be playing Jeremy McNichols. I think there's no reason to be playing Adrian Peterson or Donta Foreman. And like we said a week ago, I mean, I really don't want to get excited about Adrian Peterson this season. I think the ceiling is going to be so damn limited. I think that what we saw this past week against the Los Angeles Rams, I mean, we kind of hit the nail on the head here when we were talking about expectations for Adrian Peterson coming into this season. It's a running back that had 10 carries, 21 rushing yards. And yeah, he gets there with the rushing touchdown. But at the end of the day, you're going to be seeing just in the ballpark of 10 carries to 15 carries for Adrian Peterson on a week-to-week basis. And at the same time, only 1 or 2 receptions. And that's not going to get it done for you with Adrian Peterson. This is a 36-year-old running back, will be 37 in a few more months. I mean, he just doesn't have the same athleticism that he did once before. So if you're only going to be getting him 2 receptions out of the backfield at the most, and at the same time, he's splitting that early down work with Donta Foreman and Jeremy McNichols, especially in a tough matchup, you can't play Adrian Peterson, but I don't know if I'm really ever going to want to play Adrian Peterson. Now, our next game will be the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. Obviously, this Bills defense is one of the best run defenses in the entire NFL, if not the best run defense. So, I mean, naturally, you're going to be wanting to avoid Michael Carter if we can. Now, I know with Michael Carter, he gets the majority of his value in the receiving game, and we always talk about this, especially with the running back like DeAndre Swift, and that those running backs that generate the majority of their value in the receiving game compared to what you have in the red zone and compared to relying on the overall rushing efficiency from that overall offense, it definitely matters a lot less the matchup on those receiving running backs rather than the player that's going to be relying on the touchdown. So you can start Michael Carter if you want. I'm going to be trying to avoid it, especially since this is going to be the first week in quite a while that Tevin Coleman looks like he's going to be active. Not expecting Tevin Coleman to be the starting running back by any means, but if Tevin Coleman all of a sudden takes 4 touches away from Michael Carter in this game, I think that could probably be a bad scenario if you're getting 3 running backs out there on the field. Now, in the case of Buffalo, Zach Moss missed practice yesterday. So Zach Moss missing practice with a concussion. I'm going to be assuming that Devin Singletary is the starting running back. It's going to be a great matchup against the New York Jets. If we're going over and seeing what we saw from Devin Singletary at the start of this season, remember Zach Moss wasn't there at the beginning. Devin Singletary in week 1, I know it wasn't just elite level production, but he did get double-digit carries. He did get 5 targets out of the backfield as well. It was a tough matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers where the Buffalo Bills weren't able to effectively move the ball down the field. But if you're looking at implied team totals according to Las Vegas right now, they currently have the Buffalo Bills as the highest scoring offense this week. And if Devin Singletary is going to see close to 20 touches in that contest against a very soft run defense, you're going to go through and you're playing Devin Singletary everywhere we can. Now let's go over to our next game, which will be the Detroit Lions and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not much to talk about here. I mean, Najee Harris had his worst day in quite a while this past week. And this is what we talk about with Harris. This is a running back that based on the workload that he has, his floor is just so much higher than what you're going to be finding from really any other player here. Where with Najee Harris, yes, he only scores 17 fantasy points, which is the lowest mark since week 1. But I mean, the reason that he is dropping 17 fantasy points, 22 carries, 62 rushing yards, the rushing touchdown, 3 receptions, 16 receiving yards. This is like worst case scenario for Najee Harris. Doesn't matter the matchup. You're playing Harris every single week, especially in a great matchup this week against the Detroit Lions. I think that you're going to be seeing this going to be one of the very few games that the Pittsburgh Steelers can actually lead the majority of the time. So I think you have to be confident with the workload that you're going to get from Harris in that contest. And with DeAndre Swift, I mean, we just talked about this, but this is a running back that, while yes, it's a tough matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, on paper, Pittsburgh has an average run defense, but I think that's more so game script dependent. I think that if you're actually just evaluating this Pittsburgh Steelers run defense as a whole, I think we can safely say it's above average. Nonetheless, I mean, with DeAndre Swift, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can see him go out there in a tough defense against the Los Angeles Rams here. He drops 28 fantasy points. And the reason for that is 10 targets out of the backfield. I mean, going up against the 49ers in week 1, pretty tough run defense. He drops 24 fantasy points. And the reason for that, 11 targets out of the backfield. Like, you don't have to have the great rushing efficiency. I mean, in that Rams game, you only had 48 rushing yards off of 13 carries. Of course, that's not a fantastic mark by any means, and that's what you're going to see when you're going up against these tough defenses like the Pittsburgh Steelers. But simply, it just doesn't matter because Devin Singletary is getting more receiving yards. Like, he's literally, you go through and you go, okay, as a receiver, let's make Hunter Renfrow a little bit better. And then at the same time, let's give him 15 carries a game. 15 carries, a little bit aggressive. Let's give him 12 carries a game. So with DeAndre Swift, it doesn't really matter. That's a tough run defense. You're playing him nonetheless. You're playing him as a running back 1 as well. Now, our next game will be the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts, where you don't need me to say it, Jonathan Taylor, the running back 1 overall. We had Jonathan Taylor as the running back 1 overall last week. Just another great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Marlon Mack was a healthy inactive last week at the same time, which I think definitely does make a difference with the projection of Nyheim Hines, the projection of Jonathan Taylor. I'm not going to be wanting to play Nyheim Hines if we're going to be completely honest. I know Hines scored the touchdown this past week, but those third down running backs, Hines, J.D. McKissic, while they'll have that safe role, it's just so hard to know when that spike week is going to come. You like them in best ball, but in a league where you have to go through and submit your starting lineup, it's really tough to make that call. Now, in the case of James Robinson, I mean, the matchup itself against the Indianapolis Colts is not necessarily one that we should be going through and attacking. I'll say that. But nonetheless, if he does play, we want to get him in our starting lineup. Now, he did not practice on Wednesday, however. Practice reports have not come out for Thursday just yet. Of course, we're going to continue to live stream every single day this week, so we'll be giving constant updates on the James Robinson situation. I would say that Carlos Hyde, probably a running back that you won't get excited about starting if James Robinson does miss, but Carlos Hyde, kind of similar to what we said this past week against the Buffalo Bills. You may not be in a situation where you want to start him, but I know a lot of teams are honestly just going to have no option. I think that you're going to have to go through and just play Carlos Hyde in some instances because you're looking at the workload that he got a week ago against the Buffalo Bills, the toughest run defense in the entire NFL. I mean, while yes, it was not great from a fantasy perspective, he only had 8.5 fantasy points. He did get 21 carries in that contest. It's going to be a slightly better matchup against the Indianapolis Colts here. So I think if James Robinson were to miss, Carlos Hyde would be a borderline low-end running back too. The issue is he's not going to have a massive role in the receiving game. You're essentially just playing him and hoping that he falls into the end zone. But nonetheless, I think he could be someone we consider starting. And if James Robinson plays, you play James Robinson. It doesn't really matter the matchup. Robinson is one of those running backs that's getting 20-plus touches every single week. Now let's go over to our next game, which will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Washington football team. Now, for Washington, I mean, doesn't matter that Antonio Gibson should be healthier than he was before the bye. I mean, the week before the bye week, you had Jarrett Patterson getting usage in Washington, which you cannot see that if you're an Antonio Gibson owner. I mean, with Gibson, you're already kind of battling it off J.D. McKissic with that third down primary passing down role. I mean, fine, we can kind of live with that. If J.D. McKissic wants to do his best impression of Nyheim Hines, fine. But as soon as you have Jarrett Patterson getting touches in this backfield as well, I think that any consideration that you have to start Antonio Gibson has to go out the window until we see something otherwise. And especially in a brutal matchup, this Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense is one of, if not the toughest run defenses in the NFL. I think it's right up there with the Bills and Tampa, especially in this game where it should not be competitive at all. Now, in the case of Leonard Fournette, very simple. You're going to go through, you're playing Leonard Fournette. I mean, the total on this game is going to be very high. Right now, Vegas has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a top 3 scoring offense this week. Now, I'll say that with Washington, you definitely attack them through the air more than you will do on the ground. Like, they have a better run defense than they have a pass defense. Nonetheless, with Leonard Fournette, this is a running back that if we're just looking at weeks 4 through 8, you get 20 carries, 12 carries, 22 carries, 15 carries, 8 carries. You're going to go through and look at the targets. So far, this is a running back that's had 39 targets through 8 weeks so far this season as well. So he's averaging about 5 targets a game. So Fournette, he's that 3-down running back on one of the league's most productive offenses. Doesn't really matter that this is a worse pass defense than run defense. You're still playing Leonard Fournette. Now let's go over to the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots. And in New England, we got a little bit of a different situation going on. We have no idea what is going to shape up with the health of these running backs. Like, if we're going to be looking at the most recent report with Damian Harris, keep in mind, Harris currently is in concussion protocol. He did not practice on Wednesday. If we're going to be looking at Ramondre Stevenson, with Stevenson here, this is another player dealing with that head injury, and he did not practice either on Wednesday. So I would say that if you have Damian Harris good to go, and Ramondre Stevenson is not going to be this Sunday, then you play Damian Harris, knowing that Harris should get every single touch on first and second down. Brandon Bolden will be the usual third down running back that we've come to expect. Now, if Ramondre Stevenson is active while you don't necessarily have Harris, I don't know if we can be playing Stevenson. I would love to see him get in there and get to start, and then you'd be able to maybe be a little more confident about him down the stretch. I definitely think he's a running back that needs to be on our roster to go through and play him even in the game when Damian Harris misses. I think it would be a tough call because it's a really bad matchup against the Cleveland Browns. Now, one intriguing thing is, should we go through and play Brandon Bolden if both of these running backs miss? Because all of a sudden, Bolden would be pretty much the last running back standing on this roster after an injury to James White, Damian Harris, and Ramondre Stevenson. He's essentially been playing in that James White role since you had the James White injury. Like, if we're going to go through and look at weeks 3 through 9, so during that 6-week stretch, he's managed to have 22 receptions. So he's essentially averaging about 4 receptions a game, which of course you love to see that usage in the receiving game, but at the same time, he has had less carries in that same time period than he has had receptions. Now, if you're looking at the frame of this running back, this is a running back that was 5'11", 220 pounds coming into the NFL. Now, I'll say he's 31 years old. So you're not necessarily saying that height, weight really matters that much right now. But nonetheless, I think that kind of does tell us that he's not as small as a James White. He's not necessarily J.D. McKissic. Maybe if we were to have both Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson missing, we can go through and play Brandon Bolden. It's just a tough matchup as well against the Cleveland Browns. I'd say he would probably have to be a low-end running back too. I'd imagine that this team would definitely skew a lot more pass-happy if they have Bolden pretty much as their only running back left. And it's a tough matchup against the Browns. And the Browns, we simply don't know if you're going to have Nick Chubb playing. If Nick Chubb plays, you play Nick Chubb right away. And honestly, if Nick Chubb doesn't play, I think you maybe have to lock in Dearness Johnson at the same time. Like, if we're going to go through and look at what you had with Dearness Johnson, that 1 week where you had no Kareem Hunt, you had no Nick Chubb, he comes out 25 fantasy points. He has 22 carries, 150 rushing yards. He has the rushing touchdown, 2 receptions, 22 receiving yards. This was a primetime game. Everybody saw it with Dearness Johnson. I know everybody's excited to go through, jam Dearness Johnson in yet again. And I'll say, it's a tough matchup to do so, but based on the guaranteed workload, I'd be completely fine with it. Now, our next game is going to be the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys, where with Dallas, you start Ezekiel Elliott. Don't need me to talk about it at all. Now, with Atlanta, you're playing Cordell Patterson. As we've said, since you had Calvin Ridley stepping away from football here, Cordell Patterson is a player that you just have to go through. You have to play every single week, similar to what we were saying, like DeAndre Swift is you taking Hunter Renfrow, making him a slightly better receiver, and then giving him 12 carries a game. With Cordell Patterson, it's a very similar situation where this is a running back that just has such a large role in the receiving game whenever you do not have Calvin Ridley here. If you're looking at the points per game that we have had so far from Cordell Patterson, he has literally been a league-winning player. Like, he is quietly averaging almost 20 fantasy points per game throughout the entire season. Like, if we take out week 1, because he was on nobody's roster in week 1, and we just look at after you most likely picked him up, you probably picked him up after the Tampa Bay performance. But if we're looking at weeks 2 through 9, Cordell Patterson has averaged 20.7 fantasy points. If you're looking at what we have had with no Calvin Ridley in this offense, just say over the past month, because obviously Calvin Ridley missed back in week 5 against the Jets, 9 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets. The efficiency is going to be a lot higher with the yards per target standpoint from Cordell Patterson, knowing that this is not only a running back that's getting targeted out of the backfield, but he's also lining up outside. So that definitely makes us have to kind of skew our perception with what we have with Cordell Patterson and Mike Davis, where Patterson's just the running back that's getting all the valuable touches. Now, Mike Davis is getting 50% of the snaps at running back, but the problem is he's just not getting the heavy usage in the receiving game. And obviously, we talked about this coming into the season over and over and over again. So I know you're tired of hearing me say it by now because we've been saying it for about 4 months. Mike Davis, a very bad running back. I think we can keep it at that. Let's go over to our next matchup. You have the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals. Christian McCaffrey, a top 3 running back. Don't care who the quarterback is. With James Conner, this is going to be a running back that's a top 10 option. It's a tough matchup against Carolina. Doesn't really matter. You're hoping that we get Kyler Murray in this game if you have James Conner, just because you're not necessarily expecting that Colt McCoy is going to be able to come up and elevate this entire Arizona Cardinals offense in back-to-back weeks. And here with James Conner, he's not going to have the exact same workload he had a week ago. Benjamin is going to be getting some touches in this backfield. Now, Benjamin's not going to have a role that's nearly as large as what you had from Chase Edmonds. Edmonds was getting about 60% of the snaps in this backfield. I'd imagine that you actually have, Benjamin hovering around 25%, however. So yeah, James Conner, a safe to say top 10 running back, given the offense, given the role that we saw this past week. Now, our next matchup will be the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, in Minnesota, don't know exactly what's going to happen. If Dalvin plays, you play Dalvin. Best matchup you can ask for against a very soft Chargers run defense. And at the same time, if Dalvin Cook misses, you play Alexander Madison. They would each be top 5 running backs. I mean, potentially the running back 1 overall, given how great the matchup is against the Los Angeles Chargers. And with the Chargers, very simple. You play Austin Eckler. Don't even need to talk about it. Let's go to the Seahawks matchup. where you have the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers. Now, right now, we do not know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be good to go this week. I'm operating under the assumption that you will have Aaron Rodgers fully good to go in this game. At least I am hoping so. And in the case of Aaron Jones, you kind of really want Aaron Rodgers back in. Aaron Jones only scored 5 fantasy points this past week with Jordan Love under center. And obviously, Jordan Love looked horrible. Aaron Jones did not log a single reception here. He only had 2 targets out of the backfield. He had 53 total rushing yards at the same time. I mean, limited red zone opportunities, just knowing how bad Jordan Love was. Now, that being said, I probably still would start him against a bad Seattle Seahawks run defense if Jordan Love was starting, just because if we're taking a step back, if you're looking at Aaron Jones so far this season, this is still a running back that's given you almost 17 fantasy points per game, even though this past week was really bad. And then in the case of the Seattle Seahawks, really don't know exactly what we should be expecting with Chris Carson here. Carson can end up playing this week. The most recent report that we have on Chris Carson says could play if practice goes well, and that came out earlier. So honestly, this is going to be a running back that I have to continue to give updates with as we get to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday morning. We'll be live streaming every single day, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. But nonetheless, if Carson is good to go against the Packers, I actually think that you probably want Chris Carson to be playing in a game that Jordan Love is the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, knowing that the Seattle Seahawks would command a heavy lead throughout the entire contest, and they could just lean on the run with Chris Carson. Now, our next game, you have the Philadelphia Eagles and the Denver Broncos. Obviously, Jordan Love just stomped a bad run defense with the Los Angeles Chargers. This Denver defense, we don't want to be attacking at all. You're not playing a single Philadelphia Eagles running back. And with Denver, you can get away with playing Gordon. You can get away playing Javonte Williams. I think Javonte is the running back that we want in the long term. Both running backs right now are splitting this backfield 50-50, so you're probably not too excited about either of them. Now, our next matchup will be the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders, where right now I believe the Chiefs are about 2.5-point favorites. And with the Chiefs, I think that if you're looking at the trends of the usage that we have had for Darrell Williams here, I mean, it's going to be very hard to go through, play Darrell Williams. You're getting more and more snaps to Jerick McKinnon. You're getting more and more snaps for Derek Gore at the same time. So if you have to play Darrell Williams, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm not going to be coming out here and saying, oh, no, Darrell Williams not. Like, if you have to play him, it's okay. It's going to be that low-end running back too. I think the ceiling's definitely going to be capped, though, if he's only going to be seeing about 60% of the snaps in this backfield. In the case of the Las Vegas Raiders, Kenyon Drake just had a very impressive week. I don't think you can start Kenyon Drake, though. A lot of that was based on the efficiency, not necessarily the volume in the offense. I think that you still have Josh Jacobs with the red zone role here. I think you have to be a little less excited about Jacobs when we have no Henry Ruggs, keeping 2 safeties back and making sure that opposing defenses can't stack the box. Nonetheless, with the role Josh Jacobs has, I'm going to be ranking him as a mid running back 2, especially against a soft Kansas City Chiefs defense. I think you could get away with playing Josh Jacobs. In our last matchup here, you got the Rams, 49ers. Play Darrell Henderson, assuming Darrell Henderson's healthy. Don't really have to think about that. And in the case of San Francisco, interested to see what the Jeff Wilson role looks like this week. I mean, with Jeff Wilson, I'm naturally going to be assuming that he'll never be the starting running back in San Francisco, as we've said time and time again. However, he should be able to go through and just slowly continue to expand his role as the season goes on. I think he works his way up to getting about 25% of the snaps in this backfield, and getting 25% of the snaps in the backfield will definitely eat in to what you have with Elijah Mitchell already splitting that backfield with Michael Hasty. Tough matchup against the Rams. If we can avoid starting Elijah Mitchell, I think it would be great. I know a lot of people just want to view him as a low-end running back 1. I'm viewing him a lot more as a low-end running back 2 in a PPR format in particular, but I'd love to know your opinions. And yeah, thank you, of course, for supporting the channel. Make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel to enter in to win a free Fantasy Flock Network hat. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. You can check out some of those player props you've seen on the screen so far this video. Get into a draft with us on the live streams when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and you use promo code FLOCK. They match you dollar for dollar on your first deposit up to $100. So please make sure you take advantage of that. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.